Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at MEC Sharks on Twitter, Sheng_Peng, and Blue Sky, Sheng Peng.
And I'm Keegan. You can find me on Twitter at _hockey, my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. This week, lots and lots of Sharks news. But before we get to that, Sheng is going to have a word from our sponsor, Bring Hockey Back.
Let's talk about Bring Hockey Back, bringhockeyback.net. You might know them from their Director of Vibes t-shirts and their Sharks t-shirts. I want to do this again.
And I don't have one on this week, sadly. Looks pretty good. With the jacket. It's perfect.
They also do custom jerseys for hockey teams for any kind of event. If you know Bring Hockey Back and their incredible shirts, they've been doing great Sharks shirts for years. And we're going to have some new Shark shirts soon. But before that, though, let's talk about one shirt that caught my eye recently at bringhockeyback.net. And it's the Oops, All Goalies shirt. Joey DeCorda was at this game, and this is just an awesome game where it's all goalies playing, trying to score goals on the ice. A bunch of goalies. Like, if you look out on Instagram, just look it up. Oops, All Goalies. It's just like 50 goalies on the ice, just messing around. So anyway, it's an awesome shirt. Get it at bringhockeyback.net.
I love it. Thank you, Bring Hockey Back. It's been a little bit since we've had a podcast, but we are back to discuss many things. First of all, off the top, we have a great interview with Brock Hutton from McKeen's Hockey. He's their director of scouting. He's followed OHL prospects for ever on his website, OHL prospects at blogspot.com.
Yeah,
that's how long.
I've known him since then. I've known him since I started writing.
That's how long. It's when people used to use Blogspot. But it's been a great follow. Somebody who follows a lot of these prospects, been following him for years. So it's great to talk with him. We had him on to discuss the 4 Sharks prospects, Dickinson, Hutson, Musty Chernyshov, as well as the 2025 draft OHL eligibles, or some of them at least.
And 2 of those prospects, of course, look like they're going to be with the Barracuda. Well, we know one of them will be with the Barracuda, and the other one sounds like he will be. Yeah,
we're going to talk about all of that this week as well. First of all, the topic list of this week, because we've got a lot. Sharks have lost a lot, 6 straight losses. They had a Toronto win. Cool.
One win.
Mukhamadullin's season is over. Cagnoni and Lund have played for the Sharks the past couple of weeks. We're going to talk about their play. Maybe conceding the Calder Trophy a bit.
Yeah, I think we can concede that. Sorry, Macklin.
Kind of sad. I had a tweet that kind of took off that I just said offhandedly that we'll talk about the bottom 6. Couture not following the Sharks anymore on a social media account,
and then he followed them back, and
then refollowed. You never know what happens with this kind of stuff. Musty possibly going to the Barracuda, maybe Chernyshov next.
Musty is with the Barracuda, not
Musty going to the Barracuda.
Yeah,
Chernyshov maybe coming, probably likely coming. Lastly, Askarov returning, and Graf sent down. Is Podorowski going to come up? Oh my God, this is
no. Podorowski's not coming up. No,
yeah,
Podorowski's his injury.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't know what you meant by this.
It's okay.
We've had a very long day here recording. So anyway, let's start with the 6 straight losses
and the 1 win.
And the 1 win.
It's been a while since we've recorded, guys. So sorry about that.
Yeah, it's been a little bit, and honestly, it's the kind of the end of the year doldrums where after the trade deadline, pre-draft lottery, only thing you're rooting for is basically Sharks losses, to be honest with you, and good Sharks play. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They've had some ups and downs. I wouldn't say they've had amazing Shark play, but they've had okay games in there at least.
Yeah. They haven't been embarrassing except for a couple times, which is going to happen.
This is the best we can hope for right now.
Exactly.
So, anything stand out to you in the last few games? Other than, again, the bus seems to be kind of being driven by Celebrini and Smith in terms of the offensive game.
Sure.
And that's how it's probably going to continue into next year as well. So that's a good sign, at least. You know, we're the formation is there of the future. It's just not all the way well-rounded just yet.
Well, speaking of buses, let's talk about a couple of them. I moved up one of our topics, as you can see.
Yeah?
Keegan. So let's talk about a bus crashing, not into Macklin's car, but the Sharks' defense. So the Sharks have lost Shakir Mukhamadullin for the season.
Yep.
And it was a dirty takedown from Frank Vatrano that we think we don't know, but it looks like a shoulder injury. Mukhamadullin was earmarked to go back to the AHL after the Shark season was over, and now the Barracuda have lost essentially their number one, number two, whatever defenseman you want to say that Mukhamadullin is there. Granted, Mukhamadullin did not have the best Barracuda season, but he was so good with the Sharks in the last month that he might have been their number one defenseman down with the Barracuda. Anyway, so a couple things from that. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about the response and the Sharks' lack of response. And so I want to start with that first with you, Keegan. So what is your thought on that in terms of just what do you think could have, should have happened? And then I'll chime in with my thoughts.
I mean, we had this conversation earlier in the year, right? With Celebrini as well, right? When he got taken down as like a kind of a questionable hit. This wasn't really questionable. It was a bad hit. I mean, there's maybe some component of it, but it wasn't good. I mean, it's just more of the same. I'm not at this point in the year. Yes, it sucks for Mukhamadullin, especially a guy that was injured earlier and was just rounding into that consistent form. It sucks that it happened. For some reason, I'm less mad about that than I was Celebrini's. I don't know why.
Okay. Interesting take.
I know. I don't have any other reason.
It's game 74. Keegan's exhausted too.
I'm checked out. No. It's not that. It's like Celebrini's felt like so personable because there was already that history there. And I don't know. So what do you think?
I think it's really interesting because I was there in Anaheim when it happened. I don't think that Vatrano meant it. I think that's one of those weird things where he was just standing up for his teammate after a not really bad Mukhamadullin hit on Troy Terry, but slightly late, but not that bad. And Vatrano looked as surprised as anybody else. I'm not saying that excuses it.
Yeah,
but
and that's also the reason why. It's I felt like the Stenlund one was a little, I don't know.
Well, Stenlund one, there was a board there from Stenlund that probably he didn't mean to do quite as much damage as he kind of did, but
sure.
But yeah, there was definitely a boarding component. Whereas it's hard to say. It was not anything like even what Jalen Chatfield did to Connor McMichael, and Rod Brindamore really had guns a-blazing about that for the people focusing on that. But even that looked more intentional, so to speak, than whatever Vatrano did to Mukhamadullin. But there is also, too, though, that component of you saw your teammate got seriously hurt, and Mukhamadullin went off the ice. It looked really bad. This wasn't one of those things where Mukhamadullin went off the ice and you thought he was going to come back. He went off the ice, and I think everyone had the same thought that he wasn't coming back for this game, and maybe his season was done, right? And that's exactly what's happened there. And so, anyway, being there in Anaheim was kind of interesting in a sense of I was surprised that there was no response, and I thought, why is there a reason why? And so that's why post game I didn't really dig into it because I wanted to give it some time to that. So I asked the questions the next day about it, basically.
Yeah.
The story that I wrote about it. I asked Warsofsky, should there have been more of a response? Because I wanted to give it that kind of that beat of time. I think part of the reason why was because I think the Sharks acted like they were surprised, almost like they didn't know what happened, almost like they needed to watch the replay of it because maybe for the Sharks they saw they saw Vatrano go up to Mukhamadullin, and Mukhamadullin was hurt all of a sudden. But Vatrano didn't. Again, I know everyone wants to go after Vatrano. I think it's fair to, but Vatrano didn't actually seem to do that much. That's what was mysterious about it.
Yeah. It's just the
And
wrong angles, wrong. Yeah.
So in a way, like in that sense, right, where Stenlund, there was a very direct physical action that Stenlund did, that a forceful action. With Vatrano, I don't know, and I'm not exactly sure. Still don't watching the replay. Still don't know exactly quite what happened. Just that Vatrano kind of went at Mukhamadullin. Maybe he caught Mukhamadullin on a rut, and then Mukhamadullin fell awkwardly. Is kind of what it looked like.
Yep.
I mean, regardless, though, yeah, you definitely would have liked some response. I think that speaking with Tyler Toffoli the next day, and I also spoke with Barclay Goodrow the next day, and I didn't put this in a story, but Tyler kind of said, like, I don't know what you think of this, but Tyler said, like, look, if you didn't get hurt, I don't think we'd be talking about this, because I think he was trying to say that the play, even what Vatrano did to Mukhamadullin, was kind of not innocent, but it was such a. It just was maybe surprising that was the result. Just like, wait, what happened here? And they were in the middle of a game that they had been playing well. They were trying to get back in. It was 3-1, but the Sharks had played a really good second period, and so the Sharks were trying to. And they were coming off a couple of bad losses too, I think. So I'm not to make excuses here, but there's a little bit of kind of extenuating factors there. That's why it was kind of, again, like wanted to give it a day to settle, to really think about what happened there. But I think the core of it, and I understand the fan anger. I think where Sosky admitted they should have more of a response. I think the players probably know too that, look, one of your own did really get hurt there, even if it was kind of a weird, not really dirty play by Vatrano.
Yeah, kind of strange, but
yeah, kind of a strange play, but still would have liked to have seen something. And that is on all the Sharks, right? And one of the things that I reached out to a source of mine, a team executive. I made the mistake in my writing calling it a league executive, so people thought that I was talking about George Peros. I was not. I swear. I promise. A team executive who has gotten into plenty of fights before on his own at multiple pro levels, including the NHL level. And he said that that's one of those things where just someone has to do something.
Sure.
And it doesn't need to be, it can be a big young guy like Ostapchuk chasing somebody around. Could be Goodrow. And to Goodrow's credit too, I see fans like, and we'll talk about this a little bit later with your kind of your bottom six tweet that took off. I'm going to defend Goodrow hard in terms of, well, just how he defends his teammates. I think Goodrow does do a good job of it. If there's a reason why Goodrow didn't step up on Vatrano, I'm actually more curious to hear why he didn't, and
Sure.
as opposed to just raking him over the coals for not doing it.
No, I get that. Like,
yeah.
there is a reason why he's there, and why didn't he? But it's, and the Sharks don't have a lot of guys like that. I mean, they have some guys that have some jam, but with Desharnais out and stuff like that, it's like there's not a lot of guys that are going to drop the gloves other than Goodrow.
Yeah, and Goodrow, he has a career high in fights this season. Yeah, I think what I want to get to with Barclay, and maybe we'll touch on it with your bottom six take. I'm not skipping to that, but that I think Barclay, I haven't asked him, so maybe I'm speaking for him a little bit, but I think he recognized that that's something that the team needed this year. And so as the season has gone on, he's taken on more of that role. And if you see how quickly he has gone in on some huge guys, like I think in Vancouver, Nico Sturm got hit hard by Tyler Myers. Like Barclay flies in there. Like there's not a question. He took on Andreas Englund, I think. Maybe that was Nashville. I think that was the 3-fight game, and that's who Goodrow fought. And then a recent game, I think, what was it? Oleksiak, the Seattle game. Oleksiak took down Ferraro hard. Oleksiak, these guys are all 6'7", or taller. Goodrow is big, but Goodrow is not that big. He's 6'2", and Goodrow is flying right in there. He sees a bad looking hit, he's flying right in there. I think with this Vatrano thing, it wasn't a bad looking hit. It was a really bad. It was an awful result, but I'm not sure if that had something to do with it. But anyway, I think just to kind of close the thought about that hit, that yes, overall there needed to be some kind of response. Didn't have to be Goodrow, didn't have to be Ostapchuk. It could have been honestly, like, you don't want to necessarily see it, but it could have been Macklin going up to Vatrano because Macklin was on the ice. It could have been William Macklin who got into a fight the next game or a couple games later, right? So
our Swedish prince.
So there is something.
Broad Street bully.
Broad Street bully, right? Yeah.
I don't know what
you
to
think of a street in Sweden. Yeah.
I guess Stockholm Street bully. I got nothing.
I'm pretty sure there's not a street called Stockholm.
I know.
I've never been, so yeah,
I got nothing.
But
I got nothing.
I think in the end I would say that, like, yeah, there needed to be more of a response. That Warsofsky mentioned it too, that it's a learning thing, but I don't know if it's the end of the, like, some fans are still howling about it, and to some degree I get it, because obviously a player's season is over and a good Sharks player, but I think that this is something that personally I would say that I want to see Ostapchuk learn from, like, okay, like next time I see this, okay. And anyway, the team executive that I spoke to, he said something interesting, that, like, it may not even be going after Vatrano. It's like, you see what Vatrano has done to your guy. Even if Vatrano didn't really mean it, you take a good shot at one of their guys, and not dirty, not trying to injure, but like just a little more, just a little more English in a hit, so to speak, on somebody.
I think that kind of speaks to the Sharks team mentality, because it not like that they're sleepwalking through this part of it. They're not, like, they're still getting up for games, still being kind of competitive in games, but it really kind of does feel like a slog, at least from a outside perspective. I don't know how it feels for them, but they're kind of, I see the same Sharks team night in and night out, and maybe that's also part of it. Like, they're kind of sleepwalking a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's not as bad sleepwalking. Like, prior years, they'd sleepwalk to a 9-4 loss, but like, or 9-1 loss. And there was a 8-1 LA loss in there somewhere.
There was
right?
8-1 LA loss, yep.
So, but it does kind of feel like it. They have not played well. The Boston and Toronto games aside were the only two. And it's rare to see a good, game against Boston or Toronto. So that's neat. Although Boston is bad this year, but
yeah.
Then maybe that just speaks to it. They're just kind of sleepwalking a little bit, and maybe,
yeah. I mean, that could be a little element of it too. That's kind of late in the season. It's hard to say. I don't draw too many conclusions from it, but I do hope that it's something that, again, I'm curious why a guy like Goodrow, that's been good about it, why he didn't think to do it. Maybe, like I said, close game. That's what the Foley mentioned. Hey, we're trying to win a game here.
Yeah,
and a guy like Ostapchuk, maybe it's not a bad looking play by itself. Obviously, a bad result.
Did we ever talk about the Ostapchuk Wilson fight? Do we ever?
No, I don't think we did too much. And yeah, Ostapchuk again. Well, that shows that Ostapchuk is not afraid of doing something. He's definitely not afraid of Frank freaking Vatrano, right?
No, comparatively.
Right. And so I think there's some question marks here that the Sharks have to answer for sure. I did want to close with just talking about Mukhamadullin, just what a shame it is, because he really 100%. In the month of March, his game has grown so much, and he was looking. This is not just one of those, like, Sharks are bad, we have to give this guy a lot of playing time. What else can we do, kind of things, right? This was actually, at least to me, and I need to kind of rewatch a little bit, but I actually thought he looked like he had the, how do you say it? He resembled a playoff caliber NHL defenseman, which is probably the greatest compliment I could give a Sharks defenseman, because we have not seen a lot. here in a long time. And there were still rough spots in his game, but what I noticed the most about him, I may have mentioned this the last podcast when we kind of sung his praises, but closing plays or influencing plays, he was doing both of that. And basically using his massive frame and his skating and just like a pterodactyl, just closing in on you
Yeah.
and making you make a decision. And if that keeps getting better, hopefully he fully recovers. That's an expectation. We're not sure now if he'll need surgery. I'm kind of checking back on that, but if he if that is if he can grow on that next season and kill more plays, then this is a guy that can be really a part of the next great Sharks team. And I don't say that about a lot of the Sharks prospects, right?
Yes.
So
And I went back and that closing thing that you talked about, not to toot my own horn.
yeah.
But my first article I wrote about Mukhamadullin 2 years ago when he came to the Barracuda, I went back and looked at that article, and part of that was that closing speed thing. Like he has a really good way, and it's actually I gifted and or clipped it in that article of forcing you to the corner and taking up so much space, like that pterodactyl effect,
Yeah.
like he called it. And I mentioned that in that article. It's just like I think at that time he also had some problems with like his turns, which have helped and improved a ton over the last
Right.
couple of years to really be effective. And it's very sad because last time he was injured, it took so long for him to get back up to speed. I don't want that to happen again. And I'm hopeful that he's got a whole summer and that this is going to be not going to set him back again because he's looking like an NHLer, and I want him to be in the NHL lineup next year. So
Right. Definitely some concerns there because his injury, if it is what we think, then he's not going to be able to spend as much time getting stronger. If it's a shoulder, that sort of thing, right? He won't be able to spend as much time doing that, which is probably the number one thing that he needed to work on this off season. So yeah, so fingers crossed on that part of it. It doesn't throw him off too much, but really liked what we've seen from him in basically since Four Nations, and even the offensive side too. You see him every game making some kind of move on a blue line, just kind of making somebody look bad, and just it was kind of coming together. And we talk about we will talk about flashes that players were showing, and it's not just about the flashes because there's so much more to the game than flashes of greatness. But there were a lot of flashes, but there was also a lot of just okay, steady play.
Yeah.
And so, he really was. We're going to use this phrase a lot, probably this episode. He really was a net positive for the Sharks since Four Nations. And Sharks, I wonder what a team would have looked like. It would have been a bit better if you got this Mukhamadullin to start the season along with Wallman and CC and Blackwood. It would have been slightly. I actually think that. I guess that's a different way that I'll summarize it to close. That this Mukhamadullin would have made a impact on the Sharks in October if he had started the season, with them in this good this way. So
yep. He taken some of those moves from Wallman. It seems like at the blue line, like you mentioned, like that dangle around defenders, break up the ice kind of thing. It's looking good. So a little sad. Speaking of more sad news, Macklin Celebrini is probably not going to win the Calder Trophy, and that's happened in the last like 3 to 4 weeks or so.
Well, I think really this last 7 games, I think maybe when we last recorded, there still was an argument, but got to give Lane Hutson his flowers, man. Like
he really
this
does.
Guy is just making plays on a playoff bound team in the biggest stage.
Yep.
I don't think Macklin cares about winning a Calder. Macklin is humble Mac all the time, right?
He's a pro.
But though, I'm sure that in his heart of hearts, though, Celebrini would say the same thing too, that his Boston University teammate is making the biggest plays on the biggest stage, at least before the playoffs, the biggest regular season stage there is. And so I don't think there's any question now. I think that it's going to be Hutson. There's still 5 games left, so I guess something could happen. I mean, Macklin could put together 5 hat tricks in a row here.
Maybe, yeah.
But I would bet against that. Right now, I still have him in my vote pretty comfortably. Number 2, well, him or Wolf. I think I gotta look harder at Wolf. I know Michkov has definitely had a surge, especially since John Tortorella got fired.
For sure.
But Michkov's overall game is still what it is. That he is more offensively inclined. Macklin is not a perfect defensive player by any stretch, but Macklin you could drop onto a playoff team now, and I think he would still be a good top, good second line center, great third line center, and the defensive kind of shortcomings he has with the Sharks, I think he would adjust quickly being on a much better team. And so anyway, so I still have Macklin as my number 2.
Yeah, I would probably do Hutson, Macklin, Wolf, Michkov, and then probably Will Smith, number 5.
That's definitely a good argument for that. I think the last week or so too, you can argue that Will has definitely had better games than Macklin. Don't know if, like, by and large he's been better, but there was a stretch recently. I think though Michkov probably has passed him, but since there was about a 2-month stretch where Will was the highest scoring rookie in the league, more than Macklin, more than Hutson, more than Michkov, of course. I think that was like January, from the Boston game in January till like a couple weeks ago, mid-March. And then Will hit a little bit of a bump recently, but Will did just hit 40 points, which was, I think, your prediction. I undersold Will a little bit. I was at 35, so I was wrong there. I also was wrong too. I thought that Macklin would take seize the Calder by force in the second half of the season.
It was pretty close, but
he got close, but maybe the schedule caught up to him. I think actually also too that when the Sharks traded Granlund, we thought the initial reaction was because at the time Granlund was on Smith's line and Smith was just starting to come out of his slump, and so a lot of people were worried that you trade Granlund, how's that going to affect Smith? It may have actually affected Macklin more because all of a sudden there is just a lot less center protection. I think Alex Wennberg has done a really good job, but Celebrini, Granlund, Wennberg sounds a lot better than just Celebrini, Wennberg, and Patrick Giles or Ty Dellandrea.
So in the last 30 seasons, there are 2 defensemen that have scored more than Leighton Hutson as rookies. They are Brian Leach and Gary Suter. And he is outscoring names like Lidstrom, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar.
I mean, all those things. I mean, we don't even need to read it off. Like,
I know
it's probably depressing if you're a Sharks fan, but
it's not. Like, I feel, it is. We know that Macklin's going to be excellent in his career. He's also younger than Lane and different situation entirely. So
I take heart in the fact that any GM would take Macklin Celebrini over Lane Hutson.
I think so. Yeah.
To build a team. No, I don't think there's a question mark of it, and that's no discredit to Lane Hutson.
Absolutely.
But Lane is still a offensive leaning guy. He's probably not going to be a shutdown defensive guy. And so any GM is going to take Macklin over.
100%.
And that's what matters. That's what matters.
Yeah, that's what matters at the end of the day is
the
player that you got. And we got close. Next year, Chernyshov for Calder, I guess, is the... No, wait, I guess
with Askarov setting him up.
Is Askarov eligible?
I think he is still.
I think he's eligible.
I got to double check that one, but yeah.
Yeah, we got to see how many games he's played. Or Luca Cagnoni or
Cagnoni,
We'll have many rookies to talk about next year.
Yeah.
We did not get our first Calder in a long time, but anyway, well, it's actually not. I mean, that's not set in stone yet, but it pretty much is. So,
look, I'm a voter. I've been on the Macklin train since the beginning. Obviously, not when he got hurt, but since he's been back. But Lane has just pulled ahead. Yeah. So there's really no. It's not even that Macklin's been much worse. I think Macklin has maybe hit a little bit of a wall, but not. He hasn't been bad though. It's just that Hutson just keeps doing the same thing. And again, for a playoff team, that does matter a lot. If Wolf is able to drag the Flames into the playoffs, that does change things too. I think there's a better argument for Wolf to even be ahead of Celebrini, but it still doesn't matter though. Most important thing, any GM right now, you have your pick of those three guys. You would obviously pick all three if you could, but I think every GM would take Macklin over Dustin Wolf over Lane Hutson right now. So to build a starter franchise, build a team, whatever. So.
Okay, let's talk about some more Sharks rookies, Cagnoni and Cam Lund. We have acquired a Lund again. Your thoughts on? I mean, we talked about Cagnoni on last episode, I think.
We did, yeah.
Anything related to Cam Lund first that you noticed?
Well, I still want to touch on Cagnoni, and I've also learned to say his name, guys.
Cagnoni. I've been saying it correctly the whole time.
I know you have been. I've been rightly criticized for not saying it right.
Do you know who told me that how to pronounce it? It was Liz. It was Liz. It was Liz at the draft like 2 years ago.
Honestly, Liz, and everyone knows Liz. Liz Child used to write at San Jose Hockey Now. Used to work for the Barracuda. Now at Flow Hockey. Liz is the best. I'm sure Liz taught me 2 years ago, but I was like, well, this guy's never making an NHL. Like,
that's what it was.
I'm taller than he is. He's not making an NHL.
She's like, I'll learn it when he gets there.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of my attitude. Like, I joke about this, but I learned. I took a long time. I learned how to say Chernyshov and Knyazev, the difference. But what did that get me? That got me nothing.
many hours of frustration for.
I am scarred by that, right? So we got one game out of Knyazev, and
we got a few out of
we got a few out of Chernyshov, but not much after his rookie year. So
Cagnoni.
Cagnoni. So I do want to get on Cagnoni, but okay, let's talk Cam Lund first. I think that Cam is a guy that definitely will need AHL time. I don't say that as any kind of It's normal. He's a big toolsy guy, but he still needs to learn to play inside more. He still needs just a lot. He needs to play faster, play with more pace.
Yes.
Right. That's a common thing for young players. I mean, just out of Northeastern. So Northeastern to the NHL, that's crazy. So I think that the tools are there. If the want is there, then we'll start to see it come together. But I have liked pieces of what I've seen. He's made a few good plays here and there, but he's an example of there's some good flashes there, but he needs a lot of seasoning for sure.
Yeah, I'd put it that way too. He's had times when he's been in the right place, right time, showed off some skills. Kind of like Colin Graff was last year when he came over. It just looks like he's like maybe even Graff was a little bit more prepared at the end of last year.
I thought Graff was, yeah.
Yeah. So I think he needs more time. But good for him to get his, cup of coffee with this whole NCAA route and everything. And he's had an excellent college career. So it's good to get the experience and know just how much it takes to get there. So he will come in as one of the AHL prospects that the Sharks are going to have a litany of that are hopefully going to be scoring for the Barracuda next year. And
he's big. He can skate. He has a big shot. We saw that in how he beat Jonathan Quick for was that his first? That was his second NHL goal.
Second,
right?
Yeah.
Second one. Yeah. So anyway, there's that's his first one. I think it doesn't really matter. Anyway, there's tools to work with, but there's also a lot to work on, which I know is a cliche to say, but I think it is definitely true in his case. So we'll see if he can put in. I think he's a guy that the frame is there, but he's not confident of his strength, which of course makes sense because he's 20. But so he'll need to kind of grow into his body and add a lot of muscle and just be more once he gets that confidence with that part of his, I guess, his physicality, then maybe we'll see kind of more out of him.
Needs more Built Bars.
That's not a sponsor of ours.
That's a throwback sponsor.
Yeah,
not of ours.
not
Not of ours. You are correct.
Two
That
Locked
was
On Sharks references in his
the reason
in this episode.
that was his first NHL goal. The reason why is his second goal was against the Kings, and I was like, yeah, he scored against Quick. It's because Quick. It's not with the LA Kings. In case you all didn't know, Quick does not play for the LA Kings.
Thanks, Keegan.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's still ingrained in my brain to see Jonathan Quick and think LA Kings, like 100%.
Keegan, did you know that Jonathan Quick was with the Golden Knights too for a little while?
No, bullshit. Was he? Anyway. Players will, like, it's like when Daniel Alfredson played for the Red Wings for a minute. I was like, no way.
Mike Modano.
Mike Modano, exactly. And Mike Modano as well. Yeah. You just go play somewhere else for a year and everybody goes, that never happened. Don't lie to me. Joe Thornton was a Florida Panther. No.
Well, I just pulled a Joe Thornton Toronto Maple Leafs card, so.
Okay, there you go. Anything else about, I guess we didn't really talk about Cagnoni. What do you want to talk about Cagnoni other than his name is Cagnoni?
Yeah. Well, just to practice it, Cagnoni. I think that it definitely made sense for the Sharks to send him down. I think that a little bit like, well, same kind of, it's a typical thing you hear for prospects, but just the pace of the game, even though Cagnoni has pro experience, obviously has had a great season in the AHL. So it wasn't as much of a jump from AHL to NHL as it was from NCAA to NHL, like it was for Lund. But the pace of the game was too great for Cagnoni at this time. And you could see that in especially his best game might have been his first game as in his kind of short stint here. By the time we got to, I think it was LA was his last game before getting sent down. And it's in my notes. But there were plays where, you know, he has the puck, he is skating back with it himself. And whoever was forechecking for the Kings just took it from him.
Sure.
That can't happen. You're the last line of defense. You can't give it up like that. I guess you can't give it up like that if you are a net positive like Erik Karlsson, and that happens to you once every while, but you make these other 5 dynamic plays. But Cagnoni is not up to that level yet, though, either. These kind of jaw-dropping plays or whatnot, right? And that's okay. You know, Cagnoni, again, as we've talked about in our top 10 prospects episode, has come so far and has obviously surprised me a lot. And so I don't take these 5 games, of course. Again, it's a defenseman. Look how long it took Mukhamadullin to really do something at an NHL level that caught people's attention. I want to add Mukhamadullin too. This is funny, but I've got to look at this because, again, I'm going to have to help pick this stuff. But if you look at the all-rookie team defense, that there is nobody besides Lane Hutson that's clear-cut vote that Mukhamadullin actually has a legitimate chance to be your second all-rookie team defense. That's what I saw on Reddit, I think, or something.
I'll have to look into that.
It looks pretty much right to me. So you might want to look at that, but that there just isn't a lot of
rookie
choices on defense this year, and so he's gonna get some votes. I think it looks like, though.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a. I'll have to look at that.
Yeah. Look at that. Yeah, so he might get one of those. Trying to think, like, you know, I think there was a year that maybe Najokovic, I think I'm saying his name right?
Oh, yeah.
Won he was the best rookie goalie just because there were no choices.
Jack Thompson as well is top 5, and
I might, but that's right though, right? Like there aren't a lot of choices. There's right?
Drew Hellison, Denton Mateychuk, Shakir Mukhamadullin are the 3 names behind Hutson in terms of points.
Mukhamadullin with 9 points is 4th.
Yes, and Mateychuk has 11 and Hellison has 13. So it's not like these. It's Hutson was 64, which and Shakir, honestly, Lee is second among all rookie defenders in terms of time on ice, it looks like.
And that is skewed by, I mean, the first
first time he wasn't
games or so, he was playing like 13, 14, 15 a night
exactly.
or whatever. So I guess that's another reason to get mad at Frank Vatrano, because if Mukhamadullin had finished out the schedule, it
might be a rookie team.
25 minutes a night. he might be a solid number 2 in points with like 17 among rookie defensemen, and he would be have a lot more. He would be in ice time. He'd be a even clearer number 2. I know Hudson's number 1, but he would be. So it might have been Mukhamadullin by a landslide for second best rookie defenseman, if not for Frank Vatrano. So, all
right, let's talk about my my tweet.
Okay,
we're moving on. So my tweet read, and this was just because I don't know, I was thinking out loud, and to be honest, I was looking at Ostapchuk stats because just randomly, and I think it was on Elite Prospects or something, and it said no shots on goal in like 8 games, and I was like, that's not correct. So I went to NHL.com and I looked at theirs. I was like, still says no shots on goal in 8 games. And then I went to Fantrax for fantasy, and I was like, because fantasy wouldn't be wrong. Like, they would be correct. And no shots on goal. And that's just weird. Like, it just stuck out to me. And I was like, and it's not like I have a bone to pick with Ostapchuk playing in the NHL right now. I think it's
you should read your whole tweet too.
Like, okay.
You talk
so
more than Ostapchuk. But
it's not just Ostapchuk or Ostapchuk. It's I also said no shots on goal in 8 games. Goodrow had 1 goal in 30 games. Gregor had no points in the entirety of 2025. And then I said I could see why Kovalenko, Gushchin, Bordeleau, among others, might be upset. That's all I said.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, Kovalenko got into a game after that.
Right, but after being healthy, scratched for 6 games, and and then I had a chat with him in Anaheim with Kostin helping to translate, fittingly. So
about his. Yeah, just I could see why he could be upset, and that kind of also spawned the tweet. I think was just that, like, oh yeah, Kovalenko is probably wondering why he's not getting a shot. And this is where we have our age-old discussion of roles in the NHL and why players are playing, and everything. And I get it, and I understand that Goodrow has a place, and he does a thing for the Sharks that not a lot of players do. And I'm not signaling out just Goodrow, but the Sharks are like, A, they're the worst defensive team in hockey. B, they're the second worst offensive team in hockey. They're a bad team. I really wanted to see I didn't really want to see this same bottom 6 trotted out for the rest of the year, and it looks like we are. And that's why I was a little spicy about it, because it's the same thing we've been seeing, and it just feels like the same old Sharks and obviously there's no real reason why, like, Noah Gregor's probably not going to be on this team next year, so it doesn't really matter. But you've seen what you have from Ty Dellandrea and Carl Grundstrom for like 60 games. They're fine as 4th line players, but you can sit them. You can sit them for 10 games while you try out Bordeleau for the last time. You could sit Grundstrom he plays 9 minutes a night, so you can sit him for 10 games, see if Gushchin actually has a shot before you have to make a decision, right? And
no. I don't think that's right.
Why not?
Go on. Okay. Well, I don't want to interrupt you. So
there's literally no downside, because we lose every damn game anyway. There's literally no downside other than you're giving your AHL like rookie of the month, a guy you drafted, a shot.
I agree that no matter what you do, you're gonna lose.
So we're gonna lose.
Agree on.
So why play Grundstrom? Why play?
First of all, you need to have some degree of meritocracy for the guys here, right? And so if Grundstrom plays well, he actually did have a couple good games, right? Like, he shouldn't get sat. If Gregor does some things well, then same thing, right? So, and that applies to Kostin and Kovalenko too. So there needs to be some degree of that, number one. And so you can't just say, it's easy for you to say, oh yeah, Ty Dellandrea, we know who he is. He's signed. Sit him for 10 games. If you ask Ty that, Ty, fuck that. I want to play.
Of course.
Like, what do you mean sit me for 10 games? What if I have a good game? Why would you sit me? That's goes counter to just having some degree. I know meritocracy, it's not a perfect thing here. Like, you have Cam Lund parachuted into all this, right? Cam Lund is he is the least NHL ready of all these guys, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But because of NCAA contract reasons, right? Like he gets to play, and he's probably the guy that you could pull every night in terms of just if you look at every little detail of what he's doing, right? And so there's some of that in there too.
I don't see the meritocracy bit.
Let me yeah.
Continue.
Okay, well go ahead. Okay, let's
Well,
talk about the meritocracy. So what are you not seeing with that?
I think the issue is the meritocracy is like just because they have a contract and because like occasionally they will have a good game that they're like just kind of because they're the way that their contract status is why they're still playing.
No, I highly disagree with. I know a lot of people like to say that about Goodrow, but Goodrow is of all the names we mentioned here.
This is the same argument we had with
Dellandrea has been scratched.
Luke Cunnin and like
no, but Dellandrea has been scratched. Grundstrom has been scratched, right?
For like
Grundstrom
2
especially.
games. Yes,
Grundstrom is not
has.
a good example of your case. Dellandrea's been scratched like once or twice. Okay, so you want to kind of bucket Dellandrea and Goodrow together. That's fine. Grundstrom is a terrible argument because Grundstrom's been scratched a lot. It's been a really tough season for him, I would say, actually.
Sure, he does get scratched a lot.
He gets scratched a lot. He's no like favorite, right? So
but he's never waived. He's never moved. He's always just kind of
year. I don't. What do you? Yeah, that's not a relevant part of waiving him. But you don't talk about like the teacher's pet, right? The Goodrow part of it, right? I get that. That's what like fans they look at they look at the fancy stats. He's a minus 33. There's a lot there to kind of pick at, right?
He's one of the worst contracts in the NHL right now.
Sure. Yeah, I don't dispute that. I think that he is a fourth line player. Mm-hmm. I think that he should be making like a minimum million, whatever it is, right? But what I would tell you though is that I believe that if he was making that, the Rangers would never have cut him.
True. Absolutely.
If he was making that any team would sign him. And they would look at that minus 33 and they don't put that on Goodrow.
Yeah.
And a couple of things that I would put it on that you can see in the stats is that the first half of the season, they were using Goodrow in a more defensive, like he had the most defensive zone faceoffs in the first half of the season among Sharks forwards per 60. So they were kind of using him as sort of just how he used to be used in a defensive stopper kind of style, defensive zone faceoffs. And it didn't go great, right? And also, too, in the first half of the season, they used, if you look at his minutes, right, they used them higher up in the lineup. He used them in third line. I think he even crossed might have played a game or two in the second line or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think he can do that anymore. And I don't blame them for trying, though, because Barclay Goodrow used to be able to do that.
Sure.
And so they tried a guy that has won Stanley Cups in being a middle six player on Stanley Cup teams, or even recently with the Rangers, right? A Stanley Cup contending team. And they wanted to see if he could do it. And okay, maybe he can't do it. And so in the second half of the season, they have lightened his load a bit, and it kind of to where he should be. And so actually you can see it too. And I don't like to use plus minus because it's just not a good stat that's reflected. Yeah. I wouldn't use it even if it's positive for Barclay, really, right? But I do think if you look at his first half plus minus to his second half plus minus, it actually is a lot better in the second half.
It is. Yeah, for sure.
And so anyway, I think the end point with Barclay is that you are, well, no pun intended, you're barking up the wrong tree. Look, like he is staying in the lineup. Kind of deal with it. Like he signed, the contract is bad, but the Sharks have plenty of cap space. And Ryan Warsofsky, and not just Ryan Warsofsky, like Mike Greer, and a lot of coaches like Barclay Goodrow in his role. And I just talked with a couple games ago. I asked Ryan Warsofsky about Goodrow. I was kind of surprised by Warsofsky's response because I was asking about something else. I was asking about Goodrow standing up to Jamie Alexiak. And Ryan Warsofsky, maybe Ryan Warsofsky read some of the comments because he really went hard on his defense for Goodrow. But I think my takeaway from what Warsofsky said about Goodrow, and I don't want to read it all. You can go look at the story, but it was after the recent Seattle game. But basically, two takeaways that I took away from it is that Warsawski said that Goodrow spends his time thinking about how to impact his game in different ways than scoring.
Yeah.
And young players don't have that attitude, right? So like a lot of times they don't, honestly, right? They don't, right?
That's true.
And so that's one thing that Barclay does on a consistent basis. The second thing that I took away from it is that, and this is for fans, people listening, it's even for other players on the team. Like, don't look at what Barclay Goodrow isn't doing. Look at what he is doing to stay in the lineup. Like, why do coaches love him? Why have coaches loved him back to Gerard Gallant, to John Cooper, to Peter DeBoer with the Sharks, and Bob Bugner, I think, too, right? For a little bit, too. Like, why? And even though the skills, he doesn't skate as well, he doesn't do this or that as well, that there's still enough there to keep him in the lineup. So he's staying in the lineup. So don't waste your time talking about Barclay. It really is a waste of time. He's not leaving.
There's 5 other fourth
yes,
liners
let me
talk about.
I'm not done. So
Ostapchuk
is a center. Ostapchuk is a center.
Yes. And I actually
Giles
will say
center.
I like Ostapchuk's some of his game at times. I have not. I think there's next to no offense, and I think the ability to push play and be in any kind of offensive situation isn't there very clearly. But defensively, he covers his man. He plays a solid game in the defensive zone, and he does. He plays center, and he does have a little bit of grit. So I get why you're trying him out, and I get why they tried out Giles for the same reason. And both of them obviously are different than the guys that I'm advocating for, like Kovalenko and Gushchin and Bordeleau. They're different players. But I still think we're missing guys that are even similar to Gushchin, Kovalenko, and Bordeleau. And I still don't know why Noah Gregor has played 7 games for the Sharks this year. I have not even. Have you noticed Noah Gregor be on the ice? I haven't. But he's going to play. He's going to end up playing more games than fucking Gushchin. Why?
Like Ostapchuk, also too, I would say that he's 21, so the offense hasn't been there so far.
Yeah,
but he's
and
21.
I like his overall. I like his idea of what Ostapchuk could be. I think that's a solid bet. So I'm not trying to single out Ostapchuk. He's also a guy that can be sent down with no penalty. So like if the Sharks wanted to, they could. These other guys need to be waived or what have you. So it's different. That's just why he was included in that list.
So anyway, so that's two bottom 6 spots that we've accounted for, right? I want to go one by one because actually, eventually, I'm going to agree with you. But
cool.
with Goodrow, Goodrow's to me just an irrelevant point to talk about. Like, let it go. Like, he's on the team. His contract isn't getting moved. His value to the team is greater than his contract and maybe his actual on the ice play. But he can still do good stuff on the ice if you look carefully. I think so. Ostapchuk is a center. Grundstrom has been sat a lot, so I don't think this is if Kostin is not playing more than Grundstrom, it might be something that honestly Kostin is doing. And we saw Kostin's last game, he had a very clear turnover that led straight to a goal, and he got sat the next game.
And that's been his whole season. He's been up for 30 games.
Yeah, he's been up and down, right? And I think when we talk again, Giles, when he was here, right? Centerman. So no business being a third line center too, but the Sharks didn't have a lot of choices at that point, right? Dellandrea, I think is, there's a case to be made. Yeah, I think there's more kind of impact from him, and more reliability from him. That's a big part of it too. If you look at what Goodrow does is stay in the lineup, right? And then you compare that to everybody else you're talking about, because I think that's a good way to look at it. Instead of looking at what Goodrow isn't doing, look at what he is doing, right? And a big word that comes along with Goodrow is reliability. There's just a trust that Goodrow is going to play the right way, right intentions, which is a big part of David Quinn used to talk about that too, just players who play with the right intentions. So anyway, I don't want to spend forever with this. I know that, we can only talk so much about this, but I want to mention of a couple other guys, right? So Dellandrea kind of in between. Gregor, so this is what I found interesting, okay, because there is a reason why I took the time to chase down Kostin and especially Kovalenko, because Gregor, and I think it was the LA game, he took two penalties, which is two not great penalties. It was an 8-1 loss, granted, but they didn't help. And taking two minor penalties when you play 9 minutes a night is usually a ticket to the bench.
Bad sign, yeah.
Right? Like that is like almost always, right? Like that's what happens, right? And I don't think there's any great love for no Gregor in our organization, if we're being honest, right? Like, why did the Sharks bring him back? That probably had to do with just contracts and stuff like that, the 50 contract limit and that kind of stuff, right? So I'm fairly certain of that, because when after they traded for Noel Gregor, they played him 2 games and they sat him a bunch too. So Noel Gregor's really not a great example of this either, in terms of like fixating on Oppie. Gregor's a guy that's going to get scratched too. But I was interested after that game. I even wrote in my notes for the LA game, well, yeah, Gregor's not playing the next game, and Gregor played the next game in the next couple, right? Yep. And so that made me think, like, okay, what's going on with Kovalenko here? And so that's why the next day in Anaheim, after LA game, next day in Anaheim, morning skate, or maybe they practiced in Anaheim. I don't quite remember, but like both Kostin and Kovalenko, they were out with the extra. So I stayed late basically after all the regulars came off the ice, because I wanted to ask Kovalenko what was going on. And so anyway, I think there might be more. I don't think it's the Warsawski hates Russians thing, by the way, but I think there is something to what Warsawski said about just the style of game here that Kovalenko plays. And we saw this, and I don't want to kill Nikolai about just one game, but we saw this when he came back into the lineup, right? The last game against the Flames, and he had an assist. But if you watch that game closely, and you agree with this, because we talked about this before, he did not have a good game. A lot of his puck touches.
I think he was trying to separate himself in terms of, and it's the wrong way to do it, because that's not how you stay in lineups. But he was trying to make things happen when he shouldn't have. That being said, he still does make plays. It's kind of like Kostin in a way. Like, there's still that time when he does make a play that other guys can't make. So
right. But I would say coaches prefer, again, we talk about net positives, right?
They would absolutely love to lose 3-1 than 5-3.
Well, not even that, right? I think though that the mistakes that, if you guys don't believe me, like, just watch Kovalenko's shifts from the Calgary game. I know you believe me, but like I don't know if people believe me in general, because they see the assist, right? It was a nice pass to Will Smith, but if you go all his puck touches, and I'm not talking about the stuff where he is like in the like attacking near the net and he tries to slot pass, it gets intercepted. Like, he's in a dangerous area. I mean, in a offensively dangerous area. He's trying something, no problem. Will Smith does that all the time, you name it, right? So I have no issue with that. But if you're talking about stuff in vulnerable areas, like high on the blue line, or the one that I did clip, right, where he floats a backhanded pass from behind Romanov, trying to, I don't even know what he was trying to do there. Easy interception. That's the kind of stuff that is like, that's like the red alert stuff. Like, if Kovalenko could get his game down to a couple of flashy plays and then he doesn't hurt you otherwise, like he's just okay the rest of the game, then he would be in this lineup probably. But he has not been able to figure that out. Kostin is the kind of the prime example of not being able to figure that out, because Kostin mixes in some really breathtaking plays, and we always say this, that Kostin can do things that no other Shark can do, honestly. But he mixes it with really just really awful hockey at times, if we're just being straight up honest about it. And okay, so I want to get to the last two guys. So I agree with you that Gregor could have been sat there, but
call up Cardwell. It doesn't actually even have to be Gushchin.
Well, okay, so then there's this other part of it, right? That like they've used their 4 call-ups. I was wrong. I for some reason I thought they had some call-ups left. They do not. And so they used it basically on trade deadline day. They paper sent down Mukhamadullin, Ostapchuk, Raff, and somebody else. I forget who. Maybe it was Giles. Yeah, I think it was Giles, right? Maybe. With the intention of that they would be eligible to play in the AHL playoffs.
Yeah.
Now Giles is the one that you can look like, why? But okay, so they picked Giles over basically calling up Gushchin and Bordeleau, which okay, so that's what we're talking. That's a choice, though. It's not as simple as I'm just going to call up Cardwell. That's not how it works. Or I'm just going to call up Gushchin now. What the Sharks are trying to do now that I guess though is they may still get these call ups in. So they've just sent back Colin Graff. Tyler Toffoli is hurt now. They have 13 forwards, I believe, right now. And they've been doing this with their defense for the last month. If you guys have noticed that, like, they've been able to call. You might wonder, how come the Sharks can keep calling up defensemen? It's because it's something called an emergency recall, where the Sharks are just like, we only have 5 healthy defensemen. We got to call somebody up. And so you're allowed to do that. And so I think we talked about this last year, too, that if the Barracuda kind of clinched their playoff spot, it wouldn't surprise me if a couple Sharks forwards are just like, sore, whatever, something. And like Tyler Toffoli's injury, right, from yesterday, right? Chances are he asked Tyler, he asked Warsawski, if this is a playoff game, would Tyler Toffoli play? Yeah, he probably would, right? Yeah. And so something like that happens, and maybe Gushchin and Bordeleau get their call up. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But and I'm the most with you with Gushchin. We talked about this a bit, but like
I think
I'm just trying to explain this all, overall,
I get it.
Right? So
I think the time was after the trade deadline to really assess that, and they didn't. They
chose Patrick Giles, I guess.
They chose Giles.
Ostapchuk, Graff, Ostapchuk's 21. You just, he's the big piece from the Zetterlund trade. Graff, I think there's no dispute from any Sharks fan that he deserves it. Mukhamadullin, you want him to slide back and forth too. So Giles is the one, maybe, but they made this choice, right? And so
at the end of the day, it's very unlikely that either Bordeleau or Gushchin are going to do anything in the NHL, right? Like, it's super unlikely in their careers at this point. Generally, prospects that don't make it at the age of 23, they don't break out of the AHL, especially undersized prospects. They don't generally make it. They turn into AHL guys or overseas. So that's likely the path. It would suck if it's not. Like, if Gushchin doesn't sign with the Sharks and he goes and signs a contract with Tampa Bay, and for some reason he's good, and we just never really tried him in the NHL because we tried it for that 10-game stretch where he was up and down the lineup, and I think he took a penalty in the first game. We were like, yeah, this guy sucks, and that's how it felt. But
no, I agree. Look, and I've talked about this before, that I think Gushchin should have been up last year instead of Mike Hoffman.
And now it's Noah Gregor, Patrick Giles, or another guy.
I think that's a part, though, that I think your tweet addresses the heart of Sharks fandom and whatever. But
that's what I'm here for.
But it doesn't address a lot of the realities of just the call-ups and trade deadline. Noah Gregor is not really the block for Gushchin. Noah Gregor is the block for Kovalenko, but I've tried my best to explain why Gregor is here and why Kovalenko, there just isn't the trust there as with Kostin, right?
Sure.
And that Noel has been sat a lot too, and Grundstrom has been sat a lot too. So so that's what I tried my best to explain. Now, when we talk about Bordeleau and Gushchin, I mean, I agree on Gushchin. I mean, Bordeleau, I think that I think his time has passed. So in terms of a prospect dumb, and so I can see why the Sharks maybe have kind of moved on there. Sure. But we'll have to see. Of course, it'll be a big told you so of Gushchin or Kovalenko go on to big things elsewhere. I would say of all these names you mentioned, that Kovalenko and Gushchin are the most likely to. I
think Kovalenko is an interesting one, just because he's he has had a history of scoring at a high level in a men's league. That one of those guys that you look back and go, shit, why is Kovalenko scoring 50 points on a different team in 3 years? Could be, or he's not. But that happens sometimes when guys come over late in their career. Not late, but 24, 25. They need to get into a situation where it works, and his game is kind of strange overall. So it would need to work. And
Yeah.
I
I mean,
don't
I
think
think
it's
a
going.
Costin has run out of chances to some degree, for being
I agree with that.
honest. I
Yeah,
think even a Bordeleau, even though he's younger, has maybe run out of some chances too,
agreed.
as a prospect at least. Gushchin is getting there, but I agree. I thought he should have got one more call up, maybe even mid-season, even though
Sure.
I think he wasn't playing as well
He
too. I
wasn't.
think that's
No.
part of it too, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah,
Agreed.
it's a little bit complicated kind of thing because Gushchin has come on, but Gushchin has come on, around the trade deadline, around when these decisions are kind of made, where it's not to say too late, but it's
Yeah.
it would have
It's
been better if he's doing this in January when the Sharks had a full deck of, or not even a full, they had
mhm.
a limited deck of call-ups. It wasn't an issue back then. So
Yeah. And people have mentioned like I gotta let Gushchin go, and I'm gonna let Gushchin go. It's gonna be fine. It wasn't even the tweet really wasn't even about Gushchin. It was more about Kovalenko because I read your thing about Kovalenko. And it made me realize that like, yeah, why do we even like a lot of guys are doing next to nothing offensively. And if we're trying to get a little bit more offense out of the team, then maybe we have other options. But yeah.
but it can't come at a cost of defense too, right? Again, you want a net positive, right? So
Yeah.
that's
I also think personally
Mhm.
that because the Sharks are so bad, these players are worse than we think they are. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair. I
Like
mean,
Luke
sure.
Cunning's played like 12 games with Columbus, had no points, and is being healthy scratched.
Mhm.
Nico Sturm has 1 assist with Florida, which it is what it is. Nico is Nico, and he's still a good player, obviously.
Mhm.
But I think they're worse than we think they are. And that also it
Who
probably includes Kovalenko and Gushchin and Bordeleau. They're
Oh,
worse the way they've
you
had.
mean Sharks? Yeah, I mean,
They
of
are.
course, everyone gets elevated with the ice time, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Jake Wallman's done a nice job in Edmonton, it seems like so far, but
Yeah.
we'll see in the playoffs if he really is.
Granlund's had an excellent year with Dallas. So
Well, I love Granlund. So.
I know you do. I know you do. I don't know how CC's doing. I haven't really looked into CC, but I'm sure he's doing fine.
But
Anyway, the point is I think
anyway,
we I don't know. It feels a little strange to defend these players. Would like at the end of the day, they're not as like. It feels like I don't know. There's like a significant even on the Sharks' fourth line, they're not
Mhm.
even close to a regular team's fourth line.
No,
So,
they're not. I mean, yeah,
so
they're not. I mean, look, the third line was right after the trade deadline. It still is actually like not close to anything, any NHL third line.
yeah. So
So, but yeah, I guess in closing, I would say on my side, I'm not. How do you say it? Like I wondered why Gregor played after the LA game. That's
sure.
why I talked with Kovalenko, right? I agree that Gushchin, I would have liked. He's the one guy down there that I would have liked to have seen a little, just give him some run on the top six. I know he got some at the beginning of the season, but give him a little more and just see if he can outscore the flaws in his game. That's really what you're talking about with Kovalenko and a Gushchin, right? Like,
Yeah.
can they outscore the clear issues in their game?
And Kostin
And
and Kovalenko are both 2 years older than Gushchin, so they get a little bit more of a can they outscore their problems thing because they're older. So there is that too. Both are 24.
yeah, and so yeah, Gushchin could be a classic guy that even goes back to KHL for a couple of years, and then he matures even more, and he comes back and he kicks butt.
Maybe.
In it right at 27, right?
Mhm.
Or a guy like a Barabonov that comes later, but he is a kind of a more fully formed
Yeah.
kind of professional player. So I could see that with Gushchin too. But so I agree with a couple of those points, but I was trying to just kind of explain point by point why again Ostapchuk, Goodrow, Grundstrom, like those are not the guys to kind of focus on because Goodrow's going nowhere. Again, Ostapchuk, a lot of that's positional.
Yeah.
And Grundstrom's been, and even Gregor has been like plenty of scratches, like I said. So I just was trying to kind of, I don't know if that
No,
I
I
don't know if
get it.
that helps you,
And
but yeah,
from a
but
reality standpoint, they would have to have some sort of emergency call-up thing to get even those two guys from the AHL. And they did
yeah.
put in Kovalenko, so I'm not upset because they did basically after the tweet, not because of the tweet, obviously.
They put him next to Mac and Will, right? What else can Warsawski do?
You know what? And they produced a goal.
They did produce a goal.
The Sharks are bad at producing goals. So I don't know. Give them more time. Give them some runway. Why not? But we'll see. I mean, they're still going to lose games. So
yeah,
this is all rearranging.
That we can agree.
We're arguing about literal deck chairs on the Titanic. You know.
I don't mind the Goodrow deck chair though. That's the part that
I see.
That I do get. That's
like that deck chair. That one's bolted
I do like
to the
that.
floor.
Yeah, I like it's very comfortable deck chair. I know that deck chair. So
yeah, and like psychiatric rooms, they have chairs that are bolted to the floor. That's the one. That's your Goodrow bolted to the chair for.
It's facing the wrong way. It's hot when you want it to be cold. That chair is cold when you want it to be hot.
Yep.
But it's bolted and
it's not moving.
It's not moving.
I guess that's fine. Man. I don't even know what we're going to talk. Like we have a couple more topics. They're kind of small.
We can run through really quickly.
Couture apparently. You can say. You can go. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'll just give a quick thought on it. There were some waves made. I guess yesterday maybe fans started noticing that Logan Couture had unfollowed the Sharks on Instagram and deleted some Sharks related posts. Logan is back to following the Sharks on Instagram.
Cool.
So anyway. I know a lot of fans there's a lot of jumping to conclusions. What I'll say is that like we keep trying to talk with Logan and just kind of hear it out. We also realized he skipped the team picture too, right?
Yep.
So I don't want to jump to conclusions either way and tell you what I think, right? Which might be more sympathetic to I guess Logan. And that's knowing a lot of people around him that know him well and also covering him all these years too. And so I guess I'll just leave it as we keep trying to dig on that. And I don't want to go too far over some guy unfollowing on Instagram and following back. Who knows? Maybe someone got a hold of his phone and went on a spree, right? He has a couple kids, right? Who knows? So, so I don't want to jump to any conclusions. The team photo thing, right? I want to ask him, and hopefully one day soon he will do that. I do think that, and I have put in this request, and I have put it this way too to the Sharks and to people around Logan too, that if, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, that the kind of the silence around him right now and these kind of not clear, but these kind of things that are easy to perceive as slights to the Sharks, be it not appearing at team photo day, unfollowing the Sharks, right? That the silence kind of fuels the speculation. And I think Logan Couture has been a great Shark. If his legacy if that matters a lot to him, that I think it's good for him to talk about it and just to kind of clear the air. And I think if he clears the air, I think he'll have a lot of welcome ears. Of course, there'll be some people that will always be mad at him for whatever reason, right? Because he wasn't Joe Pavelski, or he didn't take the Sharks on his back to the playoffs.
Even though he's like one of the best playoff performers for the Sharks.
Right. I mean, that's just really short-sighted to put that all on Logan, as if that was Logan. It's not basketball. It's not one guy's job to pull you to the playoffs. So anyway, I think if he did that, I think that there would be a lot of people would welcome that. But he just has to, and maybe he just is taking the time. Like that's conversation for him another day.
Yeah.
But it is a conversation I think he should have at some point with somebody. I'm not saying with me necessarily, but with somebody in the media, and just let the fan base know what he's been going through and why some of these things happened and all that. So yeah.
And he is a Friend of the show. He's been on the show before.
He has been on the show before, yes.
So don't want to say anything bad about Logan. I wish him the best. I hope everything's going okay. And we'll know more when we know more about Logan.
Yeah, I want to know more. Like, I'm not saying that like Logan is, the Virgin Mary, can't say anything bad about him or whatever, right? But we just need to know more. Like, all we know is he didn't show up for team photo day. We don't know why. And you can jump to conclusions if you want, but we don't know why, right? We know that he followed and unfollowed the Sharks Instagram again. Okay. We know that, but why? And so before we know these whys, like if he goes on some tirade to Elliot Friedman about, fuck Macklin Celebrini or whatever, okay, that's kind of a dick move, okay? Sure. But until something like that happens, right? Like until we know more, it's I'm not going to jump to conclusions on it. I will dig around it, which I have, so just to let you guys know that I see the sort of the people wondering about things like that, and it is my job to dig at that, and I do. But if I don't have actual hard answers, I'm not going to just fill it with a bunch of speculation either. That's not good for the situation or for the fans or for myself or for Logan or for anybody really, right? So I'll keep trying to get answers.
Quentin Musty's going to play for the Barracuda.
Yeah. So we talked with Quentin today. He arrived in San Jose, or he practiced with the Barracuda today. He went down to Coachella Valley with them for the Wednesday game, but he won't play. He is likely to debut this weekend. So the reason for you guys to come out to a Barracuda game, the last two home games of the season, regular season home games. Hopefully there's a long playoff run in here somewhere. But yeah excited to see him play. We're going to talk a lot about Quentin in our interview with Brock Hutton coming up, and also a lot about Igor Chernyshov, who I believe will come too. John McCarthy alluded to that today, but that's also what I've been hearing. But need to confirm that. I don't think that's confirmed yet, and so it'll be exciting to see the both of them. And we're going to talk a lot about the both of them with Brock Hutton. I think Musty especially, right? Because obviously Musty, there's been a lot this season with the trade request and World Juniors, whatever happened there, right? And anyway, sometimes going to the pro game is what a guy needs to kind of get his house in order, to kind of that kick in the ass, right?
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as that with a guy as talented as Musty is. And so like to see what that exposure does to them. It does feel like even want to go back to trade requests a little bit, close off with that before we kind of lead into the interview with Brock. But like a guy wanted to win, right? He wanted some control over his career, his last year in the OHL. I get that. I personally don't see a big issue with that part of it, right? And so if that's all that was that led into making that trade request, then also to wanting to play a more pro style, maybe, right? I'm with that. I don't really have a big issue with that part of it. And so hopefully here, like he basically not exact, obviously he asked for a trade in October, but it felt like even back then that if rules had been different, right, that maybe he would have started with the Barracuda. He would play with Barracuda this year if the Sharks organization could have done that with the rules, right? And so now he's here. And, this season wasn't like a step back season by any means, right? I don't think. It was just, maybe it was kind of a holding pattern kind of season for him. So let's see if he can really take off. Now he is in a place that, I guess I'll put it this way, in a place that we're sure he wants to be.
Yeah. And I'm excited because it's just a different environment for him to try and to change with. Yeah. So that's my biggest thing is he played the exact same, not the exact same way, but a very similar way this whole year because that's what he knows. That's the team. That's how they use him. Although some changes there, but it's going to be different for Quentin Musty. And the Barracuda are loading up, man. Like they're trying. And Askarov has returned as well. Had decent game his last game out, right? And
Yeah. McCarthy said that he looked healthy, so it sounds like he's hopefully ready to take the load. Actually, just to mention, we don't need to. We kind of touched on it when we were talking about the bottom six. Graf got sent down. Poldarowski is still a question mark to return, and he's a big, obviously, really important piece to the Barracuda. So we talk about that loading.
Yeah, he
up
was
part.
like week to week, right? Like
week to week. Yeah, so he's not on the ice yet, though. So that's a little bit of a concern there. But anyway, with Askarov to kind of to end our episode and lead into Brock. So talking with people, scouts. I feel my feelings about the Barracuda are that they're pretty deep at forward, especially when they get Poldarowski back.
Yeah,
doesn't matter. Chernyshov or Musty can help them. They're actually pretty deep. We talk about Gushchin and Bordeleau. They're both good AHL forwards, at least, right?
For sure.
And a lot of other guys too. So they're very deep at forward. They have Walker Dewar, who's a good AHL forward. They have a lot of guys at even compared to other teams, I think other AHL teams, top AHL teams.
Yes,
but their defense is a question mark, and it's sure to Sharks fans, it's like, oh, we're getting Jack Thompson back. We've got we're gonna get Lucas Carlson back end of the season. We're gonna get all these guys, right? But compared to other AHL teams, some of the powerhouses, I don't think the Barracuda defense is intimidating. And especially you lost Mukhamadullin, who wasn't even that great for the Barracuda this season, like I said, but
could have helped.
A renewed Shakir Mukhamadullin coming back down, though, could have made a huge difference, right? And so you don't have that coming back for you. So I think it's gonna be really important for Askarov. I feel like my prediction or whatever is that they're gonna need him to win a series or two to go far. I don't know if the team is strong enough defensively that compared to the top AHL teams. Again, that I think that he'll need I could be wrong about it, but that's my read watching them and talking with other scouts who watch a lot of AHL, that's kind of where the Barracuda kind of, they're basically that's how they kind of look. That it sounds like, oh, all these players are coming back, but there's a reason why the Barracuda are sixth in the Pacific right now. They're not necessarily these other teams either. So
they're better than obviously a lot of other Barracuda teams that we've watched.
For sure.
And they have at least some star power. You're right. Like Askarov can steal them some games. Graf's going to come back after playing.
That's a big one. It's true. That's a big one.
So they do, but it's always hard to outscore your problems. So if you don't have the defense that's really kind of rock solid back there, like they have some good guys, but it's mediocre.
A little more offensive leaning too, right? Carlson, obviously Cagnoni. So when you talk about more defensive side, but like AHL top 2, top 4, you have Jimmy Schultz obviously there, and it could have been Mukhamadullin there, but now he's gone. Now he's off the board, and so you have a good set of puck movers there. Also adding Jack Thompson with the puck movers, but
they did get Axel Landon came over. We never mentioned.
Oh, he's interesting. Yeah,
he's a solid guy, but he's not like, he likes to hit. He's not the biggest guy, but he's a solid defender. But that's
what do you expect him to help in the playoffs, though? AHL playoffs, though, right? Yeah, I mean maybe he's probably a little young.
He's played some professional league.
Sure, he has. SHL. He has. Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, if that's what you're depending on, it's not going to match up to other teams.
Can I share to close? So this I don't know if you know this. So this might make you laugh. So the way the AHL playoffs work, Pacific Division, right? The top
teams.
7 make it, right?
Yep.
The number 1 seed gets a bye. And so that means 2 through 7 play a 3-game first round series to kind of determine the next round. Does that make sense, right? So you have 3 winners, and you have the number 1 seed that gets a bye, right?
Yep.
Which I believe Colorado is the number 1 seed. So anyway, the way they do the first round is it's just a 3-game series, and I learned this last week. This made me laugh so hard. So basically, usually a team with the best record has home ice throughout. So it's not like a 1-1-1. It is, let's say it ends up being Abbotsford versus San Jose, that basically then the Barracuda have to go to Abbotsford, Canada for the whole 3-game series, right? And there's an exception to this rule, though. This is what makes me laugh. The exception to this rule is if the opposing city is within 300 miles, I think, of basically a bus ride away, then you do 1-1-1. It's so AHL. So if you look at it last year, I think it was Bakersfield and Ontario.
That's
They did
amazing.
1-1-1 because they are within 300 miles of each other.
That's amazing. Just to sell more hot dogs for both teams.
I mean, I actually think it should just be home ice throughout if it's just a 3-game series, because make the regular season mean something. So yeah, so that's fine with me. But I just think it's funny that if like, yeah, if it's
I
basically
did
San
not know
Jose's
that.
only chance, yeah, to have a 1-1-1 is Bakersfield. But Bakersfield, I think, Bakersfield is behind Barracuda, the Barracudas, so it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
So the teams that the Barracuda could play in the first round are likely to be Abbotsford,
Ontario,
Ontario, Coachella Valley. Anyway, so the Barracuda should be headed to the playoffs, but we may not get a Barracuda home game in the playoffs this year, unless I think Askarov kind of.
I'm surprised they're not clinched yet. I mean, they will be soon. I think so. It looks like they're 9 points ahead of the eighth seed Bakersfield. So
yeah,
I don't even know how many more.
It's 72 games, so that's another idiosyncracy.
Yeah,
so
it's really
the Pacific Division has 72 games, whereas the other divisions have 76, and that sucks for Andrew Polarowski, because Polarowski he may have already lost it, but he was the leading scorer, leading scorer at the time of his injury. He still is by 7 points, but the guy the guy's trailing him though. Well, actually, one of the guys trailing him plays for Texas, and so he's going to have more games to catch.
Bakersfield too.
Yeah, Bakersfield, but that's the same division, so less games there. But anyway, so that's another funny AHL thing. So, but like you said, yeah. So the Barracuda right now are 6th, though they have a better points percentage, though. So, so if the Calgary has 1 game in hand on number 5. So, but anyway,
do you know? I went to a. This is our last anecdote. I went to a Providence Bruins game.
Oh yeah, you should tell this one.
Well, 2 things happened to this Providence Bruins game. The first one is I took my wife and my wife's friend. And my wife's friend is barely. I think she's never been to a hockey game before. Maybe once, but she was in town for literally just the night. So she was like here, and then she was flying out the next morning. And my wife hadn't seen her in a while, so we went to a hockey game. And it's the end of the game. It's like 2 minutes left.
Can I set this part up? Because this part up is good. So
yeah.
Go to the Providence. Who were they playing?
Charlotte, I think.
Okay, Providence, Charlotte. What day was it? So people can look it up on Flow Hockey.
Sunday.
Was it Sunday? Okay.
The 6th,
I think it was Sunday. You're right. It was Sunday, right? So go to that day's game, the most recent one. If you go to about the 2:34 left on the clock in the game, you can see Keegan cheering for some kind of, he was on the Jumbotron or the scoreboard with his fiance and with her friend, and you could see them just making hand signals or whatever. So go, if you're really curious about it, you can find it. Anyway, so
about a minute later.
Yes, about a minute later. Go ahead.
I'm watching the game because I'm good. They're chatting because they watch it, but they're mostly there just to chat. My wife's friend's face is turned to the side, and a puck comes out of play, and I see it coming, and I try and grab it with my glove hand, but I reach over because it's heading towards 2 seats over from me, and it hits my wife's friend directly in the forehead.
Is that the puck?
No, this is not. This is a foam puck. I just have this. I often fidget play with it while I'm doing this. I did. Okay, so it hits her in the forehead, 3-centimeter laceration to her forehead, bleeding everywhere. And I'm just holding pressure on it. And I grabbed the puck. So she does have the puck as a souvenir after getting beamed in the head and having to go to the hospital and get stitches in her first ever hockey game. So Sophia, I apologize if you were watching it. She actually had a great time. She's doing fine.
Keegan apologizes not for the hockey game, but for his glove hand.
Yeah, I something hit my hand because I felt pain here, so I think I got a piece of it, but it just still wouldn't.
Oh, that's even worse. So did you ricochet it?
Well, it was gonna hit her in the head, like really bad.
Okay, so maybe you took part of the
Yeah.
brunt of it.
Yeah, I got a
Fine,
piece of it. My glove hand apparently is not very
fine.
good. It was my left hand because I had to reach over my left hand and grab it. I saw it coming. And the funny part is, a week before that, I went to another Providence Bruins game. We have season tickets, so I just go whenever. And I got hit in the face with a T-shirt from a T-shirt cannon because they have this big T-shirt cannon. And I saw one coming at me, and I was like, "Oh, let me grab for that one." And another one came and hit me directly in the side of the head. And I did not get that T-shirt because like a 5-year-old got it off of my face, and I was like, "Damn it!" But this is because I've also gotten T-shirts at that. I think I'm just in the splash zone. I don't know what it is. My seats just like everything comes into them. So that's the third thing that has hit me or around there this season. So
well, it's good that some part of your body is good at stopping.
Yeah, it's my face. I should have put my face in front of it. Anyway, that's my anecdote for today. I've been watching too much. My second anecdote is that I watched John Leonard for the Charlotte. I think he scored a goal in that game.
Oh,
and
yeah?
I was like, oh, it's John Leonard. He it's like 60 points or something this year for Charlotte.
Oh, so. Okay, yeah.
Good for John Leonard. I always love that about the AHL. It's just finding, like when I'm watching just old Sharks, and I go, I know you. Like, and Jeffrey VL. You were good. I remember you. Yeah, Jeffrey VL was playing.
Oh yeah, he's with the Bruins organization. Yeah, so
he was called up for a Bruins game, and then was sent back down to the Barracuda. So I watched Jeffrey VL twice in 1 week because I also went to the Bruins versus Washington game, the real Bruins, to try and see if Ovi was going to score his 895. I booked these like months ago. I was like 3 goals off, sadly. He did score a goal, but I think it was like 892 or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went to that game and VL was up and he had a great fight with somebody. Wilson, maybe? I don't remember. Great fight. So I watched VL twice in 1 week. I'm ranting at this point. I got to go to sleep.
We're telling Jeffrey VL stories at this point in the podcast. And John Leonard stories.
And noted goal scorer Jeffrey VL.
Let me tell you my Jonathan Dolan story.
Yeah, right. There was a good, 4-game stretch there where I thought John Leonard was going to be like a top 6 forward for the Sharks.
Yeah, I remember that. That's actually when I first started, when I just opened San Jose Hockey Now, and that was the COVID season, and they were in Arizona. And John Leonard started the season with Evander Kane and Tomas Hertl.
I love it. Yep, and he looked good for a minute there.
He had one good game.
Yeah, he had one good game. All right, John. And his brother Ryan made God, there's just connections everywhere. I watched the Ryan Leonard game as well.
Oh, was that Ryan's first game or
no? It wasn't because was it? It was his first game. It was because it was in Boston, and they kept mentioning he's a Boston kid. Yep, it was his first game.
Oh wow, I actually didn't realize all that. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good game to go to as a random one-off. I just really wish that Ovi got that goal, but anyway, he did eventually. And one of the coolest sports moments I've had watching live was that. Just in my bed on a Sunday afternoon watching Ovechkin score that goal. Anyway. All right, y'all. I hope you have a good week. I've rambled too long. It's been fun, and we will see you next time.
And listen to Brock talk about Cam Dickinson, Chernyshov, and Musty coming right up, and Kasper Halttunen.
See y'all.
Want to welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast an old friend of mine, Brock Hutton. I've known Brock for what feels like forever in this business. I was looking back. We've been working together since like 2014. That's when I first started writing about hockey, and he's helped me with stories that Brock, the hockey writers, Dauber Prospects, Hockey Buzz, Fear the Fin, and now San Jose Hockey Now. So Brock is the man for OHL prospects coverage. I discovered him, like many of you, at his OHL prospects at Blogspot, still blogspot.com blog, which Brock still rocks. He still posts that. And he's now the director of scouting for McKeen's Hockey. Welcome, Brock.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
So, Brock, we wanted to get you on, obviously, with your expertise in the OHL. Sharks have 4 OHL prospects this year, including some very high-end prospects, it seems like. Each one of them has some interesting things that we're going to talk about, but one of the ones that keeps coming up in terms of Sharks fandom and lots of questions about and has a ton of skill is Quentin Musty, who was drafted in 2023 at the end of the first round by the San Jose Sharks. So why don't we just start with his season at like a glance and start with his trade request in the beginning of the season from the Sudbury Wolves?
Yeah, it's been a pretty turbulent season for him. As you stated, there was the trade request for Sudbury and not wanting to return to the Wolves at the start of the season. You know, the feeling there was he just felt like he wanted to end his OHL career with a team that had a chance to win a championship. And obviously Sudbury kind of played, chicken essentially, right? Like called his bluff, didn't get a deal that they felt was going to help their team enough. He ended up returning to Sudbury, then broke his hand. Obviously, whether you believe that affected his chances at a World Junior Championship appearance for the U.S. or not, there was a lot of talk that he wasn't going to make that team regardless of the hand injury. So, then he returns. Sudbury's recently ousted of the playoffs, but overall, he performed well upon returning, at least offensively. I mean, you can't argue with the kind of production that he had. Was it the kind of year that Sudbury had hoped for when they returned him to junior? I'm sure it wasn't. Anytime one of your top prospects plays, under 40 games or under half a season in junior, it's not ideal, especially when it's supposed to be their final year of junior, the last stepping stone to their pro career. It's definitely not ideal.
I think with Quentin too, especially one of the reasons why we're having you on is that obviously the Sudbury season's over and Quentin is here in San Jose. He's going to start his pro career. Also too, he's going to be 20 in July, I believe, or June maybe. And anyway, so he's done with the OHL. He's really going to embark on his pro career. We're also going to talk about Igor Chernyshov in a little bit too, who also should be joining the Barracuda, though he's a little younger than Quentin. But anyway, with Musty, though, there isn't any question that he has a lot of offensive game, but how do you see his overall game translating to the pro level? Is it going to be a pretty difficult adjustment for him, you think?
I think so. As you said, offensively, there's little concern. I think his skating has improved a lot over the last couple of years since he was drafted. I think pace of play isn't an issue at all. I think that he's become way more confident in using his shot. It was something that maybe was a bit of a criticism in his draft year. He had this very powerful shot. It was a huge weapon for him, but just wasn't utilizing it in the right way. I think that's definitely improved. I think pretty much anything you can think of as an offensive player has improved a lot. It's just this past year, I felt like the off-puck play kind of took a bit of a step backwards. And I think part of that kind of comes from the hand injury, I'm sure. The late start to the year obviously played a role in that as well, making sure that his conditioning was up to par. But when we think back to some of the strides that he made a year ago playing with Sudbury, I felt like his compete level, his off-puck play had really taken a positive step forward. And I think a lot of San Jose fans were really excited about that. I remember talking to JD Young. I know you guys know JD.
Of course you know JD, yeah.
He's a huge Musty fan, and he would always give me the gears because we had some somewhat negative conversations about Musty on his podcast over the years. And, the feeling was, this was a player that was really progressing well. And then obviously this year happened. And I do feel like his play away from the puck, his defensive play, his engagement returned to being somewhat inconsistent. And obviously, that's going to be a problem at the pro level, right? Yes, for players that are as offensively talented as Musty, you're okay with a bit of a trade-off, right? You're fine with the fact that maybe he blows a defensive assignment, maybe, gives up on a play too early, maybe he's cheating the zone. Those are things that you work with if a player is producing offensively, right? But what if he's not? What if there's an adjustment offensively to go with some of those concerns, off the puck? That's where the growing pains are truly gonna come, right? And San Jose is just gonna have to be patient and stick with that. I think that when we look back to, as I said, a year ago, right after that really strong, we'll call it a breakout year for Musty, there was a lot of talk that he was going to come into San Jose's camp this year and have a chance of making that team,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And he didn't have a tremendous camp, and then this year kind of happened, and I think we kind of have to take a step back and say, like, maybe this is a player who is going to take maybe a year or two at the AHL level before he's ready to be a really capable NHL contributor. And that's fine too, because San Jose is now in a position where their prospect depth is outstanding. We're going to talk about a few of those other guys, and they've got another high pick this year. So they're going to have players that are going to be able to fill those holes until a guy like Musty is ready, and ready in terms of that complete game being a little bit more consistent.
Is he a guy too? I've heard that there are maturity issues, and so is that something that you've heard too?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't get into it too much, but it is something that I've heard. It's lingering. Anytime that type of thing is lingering, I think where there's smoke, there's fire sometimes, right? I think you look at the start of the year, right, with Sudbury, and not wanting to return there. Obviously, yes, there was a desire to play for a team that he felt was going to win a championship, but I think that does sort of prove to maybe there is a need to mature a little bit. I will say, though, I will give Quentin credit. I felt like he was really strong in the playoffs for Sudbury. I think the compete level definitely improved a little bit in that first round, even though they were ousted. So this is a guy, I don't think when we're saying this, we're not saying that he completely quit on his team. He returned.
Sure, absolutely.
And he played his part. It would have been easy for him to go through the motions and have like a really bad year, right? But that just wasn't the case.
Yeah, and I think I want to make clear that when we talk about maturity things, we're not talking about anything that is going to stop him from being a good AHL player, or that it shouldn't. That's not anything too large. It's things that young players, I think, typically have to deal with or overcome or whatnot, and they often do. And so, anyway, that leads me to asking you then, what do you kind of see then as his AHL projection if everything sort of hits with Quentin?
Yeah, I think we're still looking at a top six player, right? And ultimately, you don't like to use the phrase top six or bust because players can make adjustments, right?
Sure.
But for a player like Quentin, I think that's probably sort of what you're looking at. He's going to be a top six player in the NHL, whether it's with San Jose or another team, or he's probably not going to have a long NHL career. I don't think that his play away from the puck is ever going to develop to the point where you consider it a major asset of his game, where he's going to be the kind of guy you want on a shutdown third line. Yes, contributing a little bit offensively, but also, playing really steady hockey off the puck in a variety of different roles. So he's going to be a guy that's on, your first or second power play. He's going to be a guy that is playing in your top six, or it's probably not going to work out for him in your organization. So yeah, I think the upside there is, he is a potential 30-30 guy that can play on your power play and be a major part of this San Jose revival, right?
What does he do best offensively?
I would say that his game is very well-rounded offensively. I think that's something that he's worked hard on. As a pro, one thing he's going to be able to lean on is his shot, right? That's going to be a big one for him. He has an extremely quick release. He can score in a multitude of ways. So that's something he's going to be able to lean back on. I think, especially as a power play contributor, they can post him up on the right flank, let him use his one-timer. He can get into the slot. That's going to be something they can use. I think his play coming off the wall is a strength as well as a playmaker. Obviously, he's got the size and he has the skill, and his skating has come a long way. So I think coming off the cycle as a playmaker is also a strength for him.
So he needs a lot more seasoning in the AHL possibly to really round out his game, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an adjustment to the pace. There's going to be an adjustment to the strength and speed of pro defenders. Some of the things that he's able to get away with in junior, he's just not going to be able to at the pro level, right? And that's an adjustment that 90% of junior players go through. Sometimes it takes them a month. Sometimes it takes them a couple of years. And for the odd ones, it doesn't take them any time. And for Quentin, I would lean towards saying that, he's probably going to be one of those players that needs a year or two at the AHL level before he's ready and capable to contribute.
I'm going to change gears a little bit and talk about Igor Chernyshov, because we got a few other guys to talk about. Igor Chernyshov kind of came out of not nowhere, kind of came out of Russia. But my first question for you regarding that is, can you think of another comparison of a guy like this to come into their D+1 year from Russia into North America and then kind of do this well? Like, I can't really think of one. I don't know if you've got anybody off the top of your head.
Wow, yeah, that's a good one. Trying to think off the top of my head, and I can't really think of one either.
We stumped you.
You did. You stumped me.
Because it's kind of rare, right? It doesn't happen very often. Either they come over earlier or later, right?
Right, especially from Russia, right? Some of the players that have had a lot of success coming to North America, at least recently, have come over quite early. Kind of, I want to think of that like sort of like USHL to the CHL to the NHL sort of factory that's occurred in recent years. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head by saying like he came out of nowhere. Obviously, there was some anticipation that he would be a strong player for Saginaw after the recovery from that shoulder injury, right? Like, definitely. But to the level that we saw where he came into the OHL and was honestly one of the best, if not the best player in the entire league in his short stint. I think the point per game number definitely is an example of that. He really did shock me with how effective he was. Not just because of, the skill level that we knew he had, but maybe not to this extent, but also a lot of times players struggle coming back from those kind of shoulder injuries. There's sort of a tendency to be tentative upon their return. They don't want to re-injure. They're kind of trying to go through the motions for the first little bit to try to get everything back in gear. And that wasn't the case at all. Like that first week, he was an already sort of immediate impact player for Saginaw, playing with Michael Misa, playing with Christian Apperson. That was a dynamic line almost right from the get-go. And they kind of terrorized the OHL on the stretch. He is an impressive prospect. I'm really, really impressed with what I saw this year.
You mentioned when we were talking earlier that you had him a little ahead of Musty. And so why is that?
I'd say there's sort of two reasons. I would say number one, I think his overall game is just a little bit more mature than Quentin's. I think he has a better understanding of how to play in the neutral zone and in the defensive zone without the puck. I think that he has a higher motor than Quentin does. I think that this is a guy that is very hungry for the puck. And that's not to say that Quentin isn't, but I think Quentin's is more offensive zone oriented, whereas Igor is more all three zones. I was really impressed with that and his attention to detail in the defensive zone. Wasn't something that I was sort of expecting. Yes, it wasn't mentioned as much as a weakness of his. He was definitely considered a solid all-around player, but sometimes when players do make the jump from overseas to the CHL, we do see an adjustment period there. And I don't think there was one. I think he was an impact 3-zone player right from the get-go. So the first part of that would be, I just feel like Igor's complete game is more advanced than Quentin's. And I also think he's a better skater than Quentin. I think that Igor is very dynamic in transition. He's somebody that can really push pace moving north-south. Really difficult for defenders to hold back. Essentially, he kind of gained the middle at ease at the OHL level. And I think that's very encouraging because there's a lot of different levels to his game. And I think that this is a really, really good overall offensive and defensive winger. I can't think of a real significant weakness in Igor's game based on what I saw at the OHL level this year.
What do you think is a good like NHL comparison or ceiling for Chernyshov?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think the low-hanging fruit would probably be comparing him to somebody like an Andrei Svechnikov, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big shot, good compete in all 3 zones, is somebody that plays that sort of north-south power game. I think that's probably sort of like your best case scenario that you have to hope for if you're San Jose, right? Somebody that is going to be playing first power play, first line for a long time. And I think that he's sort of the perfect player for the pivots that San Jose has in the system right now. When you look at a guy like, say, Will Smith, right? I feel like Igor could be the perfect line mate for Will in the future, just with Will being a little bit undersized and probably never going to be an elite level 2-way player.
Sure.
So having a winger that can support, play a little bit physical, play to create some space for Will, I think that would be ideal for San Jose if he can develop into that kind of really high-end complementary piece. I think that would be best case scenario.
So you see a first line kind of possibility. I mean, if we go back to talking about Musty, you see kind of more top 6, second line-ish. But Igor, you're saying maybe he can hit that first line ceiling.
Yeah, I think both of them have the same kind of ceiling, to be honest. If we're talking about offensive production, they could both be first-line players. I think Igor definitely has a safer projection at this point. I think that even if certain components of his game don't translate well, you still have a player with size who skates well, who has good awareness in all 3 zones. And that is going to play on your third line if certain components of his offensive game, maybe his puck play, maybe his ability to push pace, all those things as you'd like to see from a first or second line player. If they don't translate incredibly well, I think you still have a player that can play a role for you in the future. I think that there is some versatility to his projection and to his game.
And we didn't ask actually about Musty, and sorry for everybody listening that we keep connecting the two, but I think that there is a very, very real connection between Chernyshov, Musty. We're going to talk about Kasper Halttunen in a little bit. Yep. The Sharks just signed Cam Lund. That Mike Rear really has. He really is trying to uncover a couple of big scoring wingers. He's been drafting them in the same place for the last 3 years, and so it is a real thing to kind of connect all these 3 guys together. But anyway, though, what I want to ask about Musty is you mentioned Svechnikov as sort of a high end comp. So who is kind of Musty's high end comp for you?
Well, that's a good one. I think probably, you're probably looking at a guy like, if everything works according to plan, someone that San Jose's pretty familiar with, a Jonathan Chichu type, a Danny Heatley type, right? Like that kind of player is probably what you're looking at with Quentin. A bigger winger, but not necessarily somebody you would call a power forward. Not somebody that you would say is incredible at both ends of the ice, definitely more offensively oriented. I think that's probably what you're looking at for Quentin and a sort of a best case scenario. He's going to need to play with a center who plays both ends. He's going to have
Hey, the Sharks have one like that.
Hey, that's right. They do.
Might get another one if we get Misa too.
Yeah, you might. Or you know, if you guys don't win the lottery, you could always go for another big winger in Porter Motone.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in just a minute too if we got time.
But I had just one more about Chernyshov, and then we'll move on. Chernyshov, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because he is Russian, that he actually can start playing at AHL next year. And so,
Yeah, he's a late birthday, I believe. Is he not, Sheng? Is he?
That I'm
so
not
he's
so
an
sure
05
about.
as well. So even though Quentin is obviously a little bit younger, I'm pretty sure Igor is a late 05. So it wouldn't matter. He could play. Regardless.
Oh, regardless. Okay. Well, but do you think that he's best served next year in the AHL then?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so. I think that his game is ready. I honestly, he might even be a dark horse to crack San Jose. Why not, right? We talked about Quentin doing that at this point last year after a strong year. So why can't we say that about Igor? There's everything you want. He's able to keep up with the pace of NHL play, has a good offseason of training. Obviously, you don't want to push it with him recovering from that injury. But at the same time, like I said, this is a very detail-oriented player who is coming off a dominating performance at the OHL level in a way that few players have dominated in the last decade, right? And yes, that line and their chemistry was certainly part of it. But at the end of the day, again, I can't say enough positive things about Chernyshov. I think that his game is definitely a little bit more advanced and more NHL ready than Quentin's is.
I love it. Always good to add more guys next year in the Barracuda. We say that every year that we're just adding more and more to the Barracuda, but it seems like there are some legitimate guys coming, like Hutson and Musty Chernyshov next year probably.
Well, I mean, depth is how you rebuild, right? You can't put all your eggs in one basket.
Sure.
If you draft well and you develop well, I mean, that's how you get over that hump, because then you end up with a surplus. And that's when you use that surplus to go out and acquire a veteran player or two that can help you sort of win. Then take that next step, right? Get you from that like 8 to 10 range to back in the playoffs to back to possibly a division title, right? It's sort of the route that all good rebuilding teams take. They draft well, they develop well, and they use that surplus to acquire more impact type players, right?
We have one defender to talk about on this list, which is honestly he's kind of after we're talking about Musty and Chernyshov, he's kind of a forgotten guy here. But
he might be the best prospect of the bunch, though.
Yeah, he might be, and he also might be one of the more important prospects for the San Jose Sharks in terms of they don't have a lot on the blue line coming up. But Sam Dickinson returned to his OHL career and had quite an increase in production this year as compared to last year. It was about a point per game last year, and now about 1.5, 1.6 points per game. What do you think accounts for that increased production from him this year?
Yeah, I think just increased confidence. That's a big part. Going back to London, being familiar with Dale's system, and just kind of giving him the green light to activate, to be aggressive offensively. Being the main quarterback of the power play there. He was dialed in all season long. He had an incredible year.
Yeah, he like you mentioned the power play. I think he not took the reins, but kind of Oliver Bonk was the guy the prior year, if I remember right. And then it seemed like Dickinson was really the guy this year for that, which is impressive considering Dickinson's a year younger than Bonk.
Yeah, they kind of changed up the utilization of their power play a little bit. Like when Oliver Bonk was running it, he was kind of actually playing out of the bumper, kind of like a unique sort of set that Dale's used in other instances over the years.
Yeah, that's what usually for a defenseman.
Yeah, I think back to like a name that you guys, I don't know if you guys are prospect junkies. Alec Regula played that same role in London when he had a massive goal scoring year. So it is something that Dale uses, but Dickinson's definitely more of that traditional power play quarterback for London. Has that big shot, which he generates a lot of offensive opportunities from.
Anything you can pinpoint from his play this year that's a little bit different than last year? Anything that he's grown on, you think?
Yeah, I think he's been better defensively. I think that was definitely a necessary step. But that's not to say that he was poor defensively last year, but I think inconsistent probably would have been the best word to describe it. And I think that he's been more sort of dialed in physically this year. I think that engagement level has been way more consistent. He's winning those 50-50 battles. He's clearing the crease a little bit more consistently, and is making better reads. And I think that he's been an anchor on the London penalty kill this year. Done a great job there too. So yeah, I think that his game has sort of rounded into form in all shapes and sizes here. We're talking about a versatile defender that has become one of the OHL's best. I think there are still some areas. I don't know if that was going to be your next question.
It is.
I think, and I might as well touch on it now. It's a great segue, right? I'm stealing your guys' job. Sorry.
Yeah, you're doing it good.
Doing a good job of it.
Yeah, it's the decision making with the puck. I think that's going to be the big one for him. I think sometimes he does still struggle with his decision making in his own end. I think in terms of his pitches and his activation, I think he's done a better job of picking his spots, and that sort of like riverboat gambler tendency isn't as noticeable for him. But defensively in his own zone, there's sometimes a struggle with turnovers. And when the pace of play increases at the NHL level, at the AHL level, if he ends up spending time at the AHL, that's going to be a challenge for him. And it's something that he's going to have to continue to work through. And it's not uncommon. I know I've said that with a few other guys in this podcast so far, but there are adjustments that players need to make from the junior level to the NHL level, and that's an often very common one for defenders.
Yeah, and kind of spinning off of what you said, like my impressions watching him, and I think we saw this happen at small sample size, granted, but at World Juniors, right, where the pace of play increases quite a bit. But with Sam a little bit, he's got every physical tool in the book. I don't think there's, he's big, he skates great. He's got like every tool there at his disposal. But in terms of just that processing, that there's a question of that. And so right now in the OHL, he's a little bit like that big kid playing with a bunch of he's kind of a man among boys right now. But then when he meets other men at the AHL or AHL level, that there's going to be probably some kind of adjustment, right?
Yeah, and the big thing is his skating gives him such an advantage at the junior level, right? He's able to skate himself out of trouble quite often. That's still going to be an advantage at the pro level because he does skate that well, but it will be neutralized to a certain extent, right? And that's where, taking better routes to retrievals, having better scanning and more consistent scanning habits, those types of things are going to be crucial for Sam. And just kind of sometimes learning that not every play, has to be something that creates a significant scoring opportunity, right? Sometimes a chip out works. Sometimes, rimming it around. Sometimes, working it into space for your defensive partner or, another player on your team to go get the puck. Sometimes that's okay. And not trying to force things and make something out of nothing every single time. I think that's something that he'll learn. And I think that the San Jose development team is going to be able to work through some of those issues with him and allow him to sort of trust his skating ability to kind of help him out a little bit more at the pro level, kind of help him work through some of those growing pains.
I wish that we could play a clip of Ryan Warsofsky saying, "Live to fight another day," or any coach saying that, because that's what coaches say all the time. And sounds like Sam will have to learn that. But I think finally here, after this season, though, obviously a huge season for Sam, a record-setting season for him. Does that change your NHL projection for him? How do you feel about his NHL projection after this year? And same question about a comp too.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Sam's last year. We had him ranked quite highly at McKeen's. He was sort of our top defender most of the year. So yeah, we loved him, still love him. I still like him as a prospect a lot. I think that he can be a top pairing defender at the NHL level. I think he has everything that you're looking for. I do think maybe there might need to be a little bit more patience with him. But I think at the end of the day, you might be looking at kind of like a Noah Dobson kind of player if everything kind of works out in his favor. And that would be great for San Jose.
Love it.
Sam Jose.
I see what you did there. I love it.
No, actually,
you should get that.
Dickinson did that. Actually,
Sam Jose.
Yeah, you've talked to him before. He's a very funny kid. So.
No, that's great. I like that.
Yeah, he's very clever.
Last guy that we want to talk about is Kasper Halttunen, and we're not going to go too much in depth as we've done the last three. Halttunen has a very good shot.
A great shot.
A great shot, an excellent shot. Do you feel like there's much that has grown in his overall game besides just having one of the best shots in the OHL, if not the best shot?
It's a great question, and I'm sure what you're sort of alluding to is the production dip this year. I think one of the things that's
he's on to us, Keegan.
I read your minds. Look, London kind of rolled 3 lines more than they normally do. Usually Dale will sort of ride a line, and the production for that line is incredibly high. This year, with London's depth, they were able to sort of roll 3 lines really consistently. And because of that, we did see some production dips, not just from Kasper, but from most of the players, most of the forwards anyway, on the nights. So I think that's sort of part of why there might have been a dip, but also, his game does need some refinement. I will say that I thought his skating took a nice step forward this year. I thought that he looked a little bit more explosive, a little bit more agile. That kind of helped him sort of utilize his skill set a little bit better than last year. Ultimately, it's the shot. I mean, that's a huge weapon for him. It's going to be a huge weapon for him at the pro level. Put him on the flank on the power play and just let him go to work, right? And that's going to be his bread and butter. The decision making with the puck, the physical sort of engagement, definitely still inconsistent. I think that there's a lot of upside there still. I think he still is sort of learning, how he needs to play consistently to be that effective, even strength producer. I don't think there's any concerns that he's going to not produce on the power play. I think he's going to be a weapon there. It's just that even strength production. And that's going to really determine whether he's an NHL player or not, right? Or maybe he just ends up kind of like a Mike Hoffman type, like a power play specialist at the NHL level. You kind of, you play him on your 4th line, and he plays on your first.
You also read my mind again. That was going to be our next question, Zach.
Yeah, where's the comp here? Hoffman's a good one.
Well, that's a great one. Mike Hoffman is an excellent one, Jeff.
Yeah, I think obviously stylistically there are some differences there, but I think when you're looking at that might even be like a worst case scenario, and that's not to say that Mike is a bad player.
Well,
he's been a long time NHL player, right? But the Thomas Vanek, the Mike Hoffman types that have bounced around teams, they've kind of done that for a reason, right? Because they're on the team for their power play production.
The real deal James Neal.
Yeah, there's another great one, right? The real deal James Neal. And that's actually a pretty good one for Kasper, I would say. Maybe I would say James was definitely a more physical player. Sure. Definitely more consistent in that regard anyway. But the big shot, the north-south game, maybe some issues on the playmaking side of things. I think that's Keegan. That's a really good comp. I think that if he can develop into that kind of player, I mean, that would be great for San Jose as well. Ultimately, just with the amount of depth that San Jose is already accumulating, does Kasper kind of end up being a guy that they end up utilizing in a trade, in a year or 2 years from now? I could see it, especially when you've got a guy like Chernyshov who's got a similar kind of shot, but is definitely got a well-balanced game. And obviously Quentin is a little bit more dynamic than Kasper. So you've got some maybe better options on the wing. But he's definitely got some NHL level attributes, and that's worth talking about. That's worth keeping in your system. That's worth developing to see how everything kind of comes together for him as a pro.
Okay, our last question, because we got to get you out of here in just a couple minutes. The 2025 draft, it's a coming. The Sharks are going to probably be in the top or bottom 4, I think, is kind of confirmed.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And there are 3 OHL guys that are probably going to be in the top 4, in Martone, Misa, and Schaefer, likely. Anything you want to talk about those guys, where you see fits with those guys with the San Jose Sharks?
Well, I mean, Matthew Schaefer is ranked number 1 pretty much universally these days for a reason, because he is a potential franchise defender. He's that Drew Doughty, Cale Makar type that can kind of turn your franchise around. So if you end up winning the lottery, I think that's where you have to go. Yes, you've got Sam Dickinson, but Matthew Schaefer is the kind of player that could really speed up San Jose's rebuild.
It hasn't changed for you, your opinion of Schaefer as being that number 1 guy? I've been talking with people, scouts recently, and I think a little bit of not as certain as maybe with some other top prospects like Dahlin or Doughty back in the day.
Yeah, the thing I would say with Schaefer is, I think one thing people forget is that he's one of the youngest players eligible for this year's draft. And he's not a small defender. There's still physical development that's going to occur here. So he's already this good. And I think there's still runway for him to get better. And having talked to Matthew a couple of times, I can tell you that he's probably one of the most mature and level-headed young men that I've had the opportunity to meet and engage with in my years of covering the OHL. He's been through a lot in his life, and he has a really great perspective on things. And this is a future captain, in my opinion, as well. And I think that any team that has the opportunity to draft him is going to be very, very fortunate. So he's at the top of the list for me, because I do think that he can turn around a franchise and be a really, really good top pairing defender and minute eater for a long time. Then after that, again, it's a quality draft year. You've got Michael Misa, you've got James Higgins, depending on what your opinion of Higgins is these days, based off of maybe I would say a not so terrific second half after the World Juniors, but he's still a terrific player. You've got Porter Martone, like you mentioned. You have a lot of really good players available to you in this top 10. I'm not crazy about maybe the depth of the draft this year. I think there's a big drop off sort of at like 2022. If you're picking at the end of the first round, I don't know if it's a terrific year for that, but there are some potential stars to be had inside the lottery. And San Jose is going to be in a great position to add somebody to that stable that they've definitely accumulated.
Well, you put a gun to your head now. So number 1 pick, is that going to be Schaefer in your mind then, if you get that pick?
Yeah, I think honestly, regardless of who ends up at number 1, I think it's Schaefer. I really do. I think when you're picking number 1, you're not picking based on need. You're picking on the player that you believe is going to be the best, because those needs can change. You have to take best player available, the player that you think is going to turn your franchise around. So even if Chicago,
right, that's the talk, right? Chicago gets
right. Even if they're
deep on defense
first, yeah, I think you go Schaefer, and then you work things out. You make some trades, or you entertain offers for first overall. You move down 2 or 3 spots. You get another maybe late first, early second for that switch, and you call it a day. But I would be shocked if it's not Schaefer at number 1. Then after that, I think that's when things get a little bit more dicey.
Yeah.
If San Jose,
who is your number 2? Who is your number 3?
My number 2 is Misa.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that he is so dynamic makes him a very potentially dangerous NHL player. And, I think one thing that people sort of don't realize about Misa is, he's not small. I think that, there's this kind of natural comparison to James Higgins just based off of the fact that they play the same position, that, they're both candidates to be second and third in that sort of range. Whereas Higgins is under 6 feet and Misa is 6'1". This is a guy that could grow even further. And when he's done maturing, well, I don't know what phrase you want to say without sounding creepy, but, when this guy has his man strength, right? When he is done maturing, he could be 6'1", 200 pounds with the kind of dynamic game that he has. And his game doesn't lack jam. He has some physicality to his game. He has some tenacity. He's an excellent penalty killer. He's very active in puck pursuit. He's a great playmaker, has a great shot, skates incredibly well, the complete package. And I think that he would be my number 2 right now.
Okay.
Are you a Martone 3 guy?
No. I think at 3, honestly, I'd probably lean Anton Friedel right now.
Nice.
I have a tendency to sort of lean towards those types of players. I like players who have a complete game, who can bring some physicality, who play a very mature brand of hockey, and I think Anton is that player. I think that his play in the second half of the season has been incredible now that he's fully healthy. And I look at him as the kind of guy that can play in any situation for your NHL franchise. And that's not to say that I dislike Martone or I dislike Higgins or any of the other players available in that range. But I just look at Anton and the fact that, coming into the year, this was a guy that we were considering as somebody who could challenge James Higgins. And then the injuries happened at the beginning of the year. There's some lackluster play. His pace of play was lagging behind. And this was a player who also came into the year with some skating concerns for that kind of high pick. And then the injuries and the poor play at the beginning of the year kind of was like, okay, yeah, it doesn't look like his skating's gotten any better. Maybe this is concerning. He started to drop on a lot of lists. Well, now, if you watch him play now in the SHL, I don't see the skating as a concern at all. I think that it's really had an uptick now that he's fully healthy. And this is kind of like another guy that I would consider to be the complete package. And I think that he's going to be a real attractive pick for NHL teams for that exact reason. Same with Caleb Denoé. I think he's kind of a similar kind of guy, that all situations power pivot that NHL teams covet. We all know that that's the kind of player that NHL teams are really looking for at the draft these days, because any team that wants to win in the playoffs, they need somebody like that. And that's ultimately the goal, right?
I love it. Anything else that you want to talk about from the OHL side of this year's draft before we let you go?
I think the fact is that it's a good year for the OHL. We've mentioned some of the high end guys. There's also some guys that are going to be drafted in the mid first that I think are going to be really, really valuable pieces for NHL teams. Kashan Aitchison is an incredibly rugged defender, real throwback. He's going to be a fan favorite for whoever drafts him. Jake O'Brien is probably one of the smartest players in this draft class. Very physically immature. There's some parts of his game that are going to need to improve a lot, but his IQ, his processing ability is through the roof. One of the best playmakers available. Brady Martin, he would run through a wall for his team. This is a highly competitive young player. Think of like a young Mike Richards, right? Like that's the kind of impact that I think Brady Martin can have for an NHL franchise. I think that when you look back on this crop from the OHL, in 5-10 years, it's going to be a really strong one.
Anything you want to plug before we let you go? Thank you so much for talking with us all about Sharks prospects and everything.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. We've obviously at McKeen's Hockey, we're going to have our draft guide come out. We usually aim for sort of like an end of May, beginning in June release date after the U18s. because that isn't it's only one event, but it is an important event on the scouting calendar. So you've got to wait until that's completed to really figure out your final rankings and get everything in order. So the guide will be released around that time. We've also got our annual prospect guide. We call it a prospect report. That usually we release in like March, April. That's going to be coming out probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It ranks all the affiliated prospects. So it'll be a top 200 organizational rankings, write-ups on all those players, biggest risers, fallers, all that sort of stuff.
How did the Sharks do?
You're going to have to wait and see. I can't spoil that for you.
You don't have to tell the exact number, but do they do well? I'm trying to sell copies of your magazine, man.
They're going to be very high, Shaq.
Okay, there you go. That's all.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Brock. We will catch you next time. Maybe after the draft, we'll have a little bit of a retrospective when the Sharks grab one of these OHL guys.
Yeah, sounds great. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks again, Brock.